In 2006, as a low-level store worker, I wrote a white paper called The Escape Plan that would transform Best Buy's game business and allow it to crush competition like GameStop, Walmart, and Amazon. The document made it up to Best Buy Corporate in Richfield, Minnesota, and I was able to score a one-on-one meeting with then COO Brian Dunn to pitch it. He became CEO shortly afterward, Circuit City folded, and all of this happened right during the height of the 2008 financial downturn. The plan was never implemented. Here is the whole story. In 2000, at the age of 16, I had to get a job, and I wanted to work at my favorite store, Best Buy, and hang out around the PC games all day. I got the job with a whopping $7 per hour pay, but I also got to cover aisle after aisle of music CDs and movies and TV shows on VHS tapes. Stop me if you've heard of these things before. I also got into console gaming when I hadn't owned a console in years, but with the original Xbox on the horizon, I felt like learning up. I wound up becoming the gaming guy, managing PlayStation, Nintendo 64, and Dreamcast games, and selling people memory cards and second controllers. I intended to work there for 5 years. 2 years until I could attend the Art Institute of Colorado in Denver, and then 3 while I studied there before I went to work at some cool animation studio. Well, college didn't work out, but I still had, Best Buy. And you need to know that I bled blue for that company. Like, I really cared. I was young, loud, and excitable, but by 2006 it was getting really tired and old. I really should have moved on, gotten my degree, gotten a better paying job in a call center in town, became the filmmaker I actually wanted to be. But I was a dumb kid who really just wanted to make the Fortune 500 company I worked for a much better competitor in the game space. I was getting really tired of the decisions being handed down from corporate about gaming. I mean, yeah, they were able to procure a lot more gaming hardware than other retailers because of our clout as an electronics retailer, but you couldn't even pre-order games. I mean, you could buy a $5 piece of paper that went toward the purchase price of the game, but we still wound up ordering 1 billion more copies than we needed, so it didn't really matter as far as inventory allocation went, for better and worse. We didn't get any cool game merch, we didn't get any of the cool rarer games, we didn't have any kind of loyalty program, our planograms caused sections of games to oddly break around aisles. Our test drive experience pods were basically just babysitting spaces when they were intended to show off how game systems worked so much better in good home theater setups with surround sound and high definition TVs. If I didn't get such a good discount, I would have been a GameStop customer full time. My coworkers and I really felt like we were letting our customers down. So I thought, well, I could just keep complaining to my team. What if I actually came up with a solution? So I spent something like 50 hours of my own time off the clock passionately assembling a plan to rebuild Best Buy's gaming business from scratch, from the store level all the way up. I conducted surveys among customers and employees, and while the sample size wasn't very large, it did confirm some of my hypotheses. At the time, the company was blowing up with revenue doubling every 5 years or so. Internally, they were terrified of getting stale and inflexible as they grew, so they were experimenting with different store concepts. One of these was called Escape, and it was this kind of rentable game space with rare electronics and stuff based out of Chicago. When I began work on my white paper, I figured I could use that awesome branding, so I wrote the whole thing around it, using every pun and wordplay I could think of. Escape would be a gaming store within a store, something that they modeled years later when they were trying to recover from their post-recession lull under Hubert Joly. Escape employees were called artists. The closed-off gaming home theater demo would be called The Pod. The internal streaming service that piped in trailers of new games and exclusive interviews with iconic developers would be called Fire. It goes on and on like this for a while. By November 2006, I finished the 108-page document, The Escape Plan, and made sure that 2 copies were printed. My coworkers loved it, but it wasn't my intention to keep the documents in the store. Over the next few months, both copies would wind up leaving the store on the wings of district and territory managers. I had a lot of faith in my approach to bottom-up innovation, but soon the radio went silent and I was right back where I started. Needless to say, I got really depressed. In 2007, a few ad guys at corporate created Blue Shirt Nation, an internal social network, to get a better feel for what customers wanted based on what actual store employees were saying. It wasn't like Facebook or even MySpace. It was like an old school web forum, something I was familiar with. It wasn't very large, even if there were 30,000 registered employees on it, but it was an active community of both store employees and corporate employees based out of Richfield. Since pushing my plan from the store went literally nowhere, it seemed super smart to upload the escape plan directly to Blue Shirt Nation. It immediately got traction. By the end of 2007 leading into 2008, I was sitting on phone calls with corporate employees. In February 2008, I was invited to Best Buy Corporate to work on a growth accelerator, where we brainstormed the next best steps for Best Buy's digital future. You know. Yeah, it sounds kind of ambiguous in a way that only corporate speak can be. The plan was to fly me out every other Wednesday morning, then fly me back every Thursday afternoon for 7 sessions over 3 months. Even though I'd been with the company for 7 years at that point, I had no experience with business travel whatsoever. I had never taken a flight on my own before. I had to learn how to expense my costs because I was paying out of pocket for hotel and transportation to and from the campus, and I didn't have a company card like some of the store managers they were flying in for this program. I was kind of just scraping by paycheck to paycheck as it was, so I was existentially terrified while also being really excited about this new opportunity I had to make my plan come to life. The first few weeks they even had me drive an hour and a half to Denver International Airport instead of the airport that was just down the street. This normally would have been okay, but I was terrified that my car wouldn't get me there. Or that my car would get me there but then not start again after 36 hours in long-term parking. Naturally, the first week I was there, it had just snowed a whole hell of a lot, and even though I'm from Colorado, this was some immense snow and extremely cold, so that was cool. Cold. I took the cab to Best Buy's corporate campus, colloquially called the Sandcrawlers, for reasons that are pretty obvious, and I met with my contact, which is really cool to say out loud. It felt like I was being guided by a string because of how overwhelmed I was by this extremely different setting. I told someone randomly that I felt like I was a fish out of water, and they told me to just hop back in. Coming from the store where our activity was regulated down to when we took breaks and lunches and what our hourly and daily performance goals were, it was weird to have people just come and go out of the meetings casually. People would be in the program some weeks, but not others. There were couches and open spaces where people could have impromptu meetings and just be smart and talented, which is something that didn't really happen in the store where your role was to just execute the plans they developed up there. I ran into a number of people who said they had my escape plan in a binder at their desks, and that felt pretty cool. There were 2 growth accelerators going on at the same time, and I was there to provide insight for gaming. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty here, but I wasn't there to pitch the escape plan. I was there to validate what corporate already knew. I learned a lot about where corporate's head was regarding the things that mattered so much to me in the store, and the thought processes they employed to put those plans together. I got to visit the lab stores in the area that were trying out new ideas. I had never seen a table that cost $10,000 before, but here it was in the middle of a Best Buy, with musical instruments on top of it. I got to visit one of the handful of stores that had what was essentially a guitar center inside. But again, I wasn't there to pitch the escape plan whole cloth, but to use my insights from it. What I came up with was called Hammer, which would have had all the clout of a private label store magazine like Game Informer to get hot gaming exclusives, but it was digital and authored for you specifically with content that would be added or changed based on the kind of gamer you were. In our final presentation, I pitched this digital magazine and a need for a czar to own gaming at a top level with a comprehensive vision, instead of gaming just being the product of a bunch of siloed efforts. I got a lot of nods and yeahs, and the next day I was back in the store doing what I usually did, but with kind of an afterglow and, no doubt, a puffed up ego. So what happened next? Well, nothing they nodded and said yeah to came to fruition, but we did buy Napster, which was an iTunes-style digital music store. On paper you could see the appeal, but it turned out to be an absolute waste you could see from a mile out, because this was clearly not a culture that could have integrated a service like that effectively or been clever about it in the slightest. But corporate believed that, and they spent $135 million doing it. They wound up selling it off again a few years later. Like seriously, almost anyone I knew could tell them that they were wasting their money and energy doing that, which was true for so many corporate initiatives. Through some of my friends, I was invited to sit on one of the committees corporate held every couple months to hear from store-level associates. So I went back to corporate a few more times and did not squander the opportunity. I took the escape plan and updated it based on what I'd learned from the Growth Accelerator, with a whole bunch of corporate lingo and a massive but completely unnecessary section about what the hell gaming was and how video game hardware worked, and really just trying to come across as knowledgeable. In retrospect, I really shouldn't have done that. The updated plan called for a unified ID that piggybacked our Reward Zone program that would allow Best Buy to tailor not just gaming, but the entire store experience around your preferences and store purchases, something that Amazon was known for in 2008, but we could have really capitalized on as a set of hundreds of tech-savvy electronics stores. I don't know why Microsoft Word switched everything here to Comic Sans, but it did, and I'm not changing it. Through Blue Shirt Nation, I managed to score a one-on-one with Chief Operating Officer Brian Dunn during the next committee meeting. I printed a single copy of the second edition of the escape plan on my own dime, then 3-hole punched it into an aqua-colored binder that matched the art I had done for it. I even bought an aqua-colored tie, then learned how to tie that tie with a YouTube video. I was at campus with my posse at least half an hour before the meeting, waiting on the executive couch that faced a few C-level offices. Brian came along and I pitched him on the idea of keeping relevant in gaming with this plan I had developed in this binder that was in my hands. He flipped through it at a point, and before we wrapped up he asked for a number. I said something like $150 million to start, a figure that someone else had prodded me about, and I kinda just guessed. The second edition of this plan had a detailed schematic based on all of my new information about how to build Escape, even if I had zero experience in bringing together an elaborate corporate organization like that. He nodded, we shook hands, he appreciated my effort, and went on to his next meeting. That felt amazing. I saw him again in Dallas at a holiday preparation meeting where they flew out all the company's media supervisors from across the country. But it really boiled down to a game of phone tag with Brian about what next steps were. And then the economic world blew up. Best Buy needed to shed a whole bunch of corporate labor and offered generous severance packages for anyone who volunteered first. And who were the first to go? Well, it was a lot of the people I worked with during the Growth Accelerator, including the vice president who put the whole thing in motion. So after 3 years, I was kind of back to square one again. I did finally network with Brian again, who handed me down to someone more specific, who handed me off to someone even more specific, who at that point had no power or access to the funds needed to bring anything nearly as ambitious as the escape plan to life. So that was the end. I mean, that was the same corporate culture that wanted stores to produce video content like what I was doing with the Modern Warfare 2 release, but wouldn't pay a dime for a cost center to get it done. At that point in March 2009, I switched gears and began filming my E3 documentary, Infinite Lives: The Road to E3, a dream project I'd been planning for years. I talked a whole bunch about that in another video. But my morale plummeted. I stopped giving a shit about my work in the store, and then when corporate opened up applications for committees again in 2010, which felt like a Hail Mary to give a crap about my job again, my manager refused to sign off. The company transitioned Blue Shirt Nation out of existence, which was code for the original guys who built this are gone and no one wants to manage it, so it's going away. After some soul searching and time passed, I got real passionate about social media. And in September 2010, they fired me. I'll put that story in the description below too. So what did I get out of all that? Perspective, I suppose. Someone got me into Flight of the Conchords, so that was a plus. I learned a lot about corporate processes and Six Sigma optimization workshops. Connections, definitely connections. Even if a decade later they haven't really done anything. During the Growth Accelerator, I got to work with the project lead behind the Escape Store project in Chicago, and I learned a lot about it. I kind of wish I'd grilled him more, but hindsight, etc., etc. If you've never understood what a corporate environment is like, imagine you're really smart. Probably white, probably a man, college educated, and you're employed for your mental talents and insight instead of your physical labor. Whoa, right? Imagine living in an area where there's always an employer right around the corner ready to pay you an extra $10,000 to $20,000 a year for work you're already good at, so there's very little company loyalty. Imagine what store-level employees think, believe, and encounter every single day. And it's just a data point in a spreadsheet that you hired a vendor to gather. Imagine getting paid so much that if you needed to take months off to, take care of your family or move across the country, something you could also afford, you can do that. Imagine you could voluntarily choose to not work. And then 2 weeks later, you're not existentially worried about how you're going to pay for rent or provide food for your family like your coworkers at the store level are. Imagine that. How weird. How strange not having to not having to worry about food and money and stuff. Oh, wealth inequality is a bitch, isn't it? Oh my god. But I'm not bitter. Nah, not at all. But I know what you're thinking. Whew, Nick, you know what? The future of gaming retail was always online and owned by the platform holders. There's no way that even if Best Buy decided to go whole hog on your plan, that it would have worked out in the end. I mean, look at where GameStop is now, on the brink of extinction. Penny Arcade was joking about the digital gaming apocalypse in early 2007 for crying out loud. And in response I say, yeah, probably. Even if we started in 2006, the day after I finished the white paper's first draft, it would have been an uphill battle. Best Buy still went and rehired publisher Future to do an in-store magazine that no one gave a shit about. They made a gamer club, which I literally told corporate employees was one of the lamest things I'd ever heard, but they went with it anyway. Their biggest, most innovative move was to put all of their chips on used games because of the profit margins. What I think would have really worked, especially in putting together the second edition, is that Best Buy could have created an infinitely more detailed and personalized experience for each customer that went far beyond what they were doing with their customer-centric models, even beyond what Amazon was doing, although Amazon had the advantage of having far more verticals than a mere electronics store like Best Buy did. Once the economy cratered and their most obvious competition was now a smoldering ruin, it really feels like Best Buy gave up. All of Best Buy's grand plans for that era went right out the window. Their revenue has been stagnant for the last 12 years, and even if profit is better, that's the only thing investors give a shit about. And what investors give a shit about is the only thing that any corporation like Best Buy gives a shit about. All of their efforts to expand internationally into China, Turkey, and Britain all folded. Reading r/Best Buy is like traversing a minefield of mental health horror stories as employees are overworked, as their concerns are the lowest ranking priority in how Best Buy corporate planned their COVID response. In the end, nothing turned out the way I wanted for all the work I put in, and Best Buy had to swallow some real humble pie. I think it's better that the Coen brothers wrap this thing up.
What did we learn, Palmer?
I don't know, sir.
I don't fucking know either. I guess we learned not to do it again.
Yes, sir.
I'm fucked if I know what we did.
Yes, sir. It's hard to say.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Well, hello there. It appears we hit 500 subscribers a lot quicker than I thought. It was totally not planned to hit it as fast as we did, but I'm glad we did, and I'm appreciative of every single new subscriber I have and all the views and all the cool comments and stuff like that. One thing that's been popping up a lot is people asking me, where's the Patreon? It's kind of everywhere. I've put a link in the description. It's patreon.com/the-nth-review. So if you've got even $1 to throw in there, that's great. If you've got at least $5, you get in the cool credits breakdown over here. You get all kinds of it's early days, but you get exclusive content by being a patron, and obviously my eternal thanks, because I'm kind of just going by Steam sale by Steam sale, trying to acquire games and stuff like that right now. I don't have any consoles. So if you want to help out the Nth Review, if you want to see more Nth Review, obviously Patreon, like and subscribe. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell down here. The new goal is 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, because if we can do that, we can start the monetization process, and then the videos start going out everywhere over YouTube. YouTube likes recommending videos that are monetized and have 1,000 subscribers channels. So don't forget that the conversation continues on Discord and Reddit and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Everywhere you are at, the Nth Review is at too. So don't forget that. And hey, I'll see ya. I can't snap with this left hand. Next time. Boo, boo, boop.